Chapter 17 Industrial Supremacy. Sources of industrial growth. Iron and steel production soar with the help of the Bessemer process and the open hearth process of changing iron to steel. They were concentrated in Pennsylvania and Ohio, as well as other areas with iron ore like Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago, and Birmingham. There were new transportation systems, larger freighters, steam engines, which help speed unloading. The relationship with the railroad and steel. The steel industry provides rails, and the railroads provide markets and transport for steel. There's also the rise of the petroleum industry with the help of George Bissell, who shows its commercial value. It rose because of the need for lubrication of machines, and as well as the development of other products. Gasoline plus the engine by Daimler equals the automobile, and some of the businessmen who developed their automobiles were Duryea and Henry Ford. From 1895 to 1917, there were nearly 5 million cars. This reshaped American life. Not only do we have automobiles, but Wilbur and Orville Wright start an airplane, which was basically a glider with an internal combustion engine. However, there was not commercial flight until the 1920s. There is an emergence of corporate research and development labs, and there's a decline in government support for research. Some of the companies that used this system were Bell Telephone, DuPont, General Electric, and Eastman Kodak. There's a connection between the university research and the needs of the industrial economy, so this helps lead to rapid development. Frederick Winslow Taylor develops this idea of scientific management, which came to be known as Taylorism. It subdivides tasks to increase production efficiency, and mass production also increases with the moving assembly line of Henry Ford. The railroad is an agent of industrial progress. It provides transportation and access to markets. Also with the railroad brings time zones because they had to set national rail schedules. And the federal government also gives subsidies to help spread the railroad. Corporate businesses could sell their stock to the public, where the public had limited liability. They were only responsible for the stocks that they bought, not the entire corporation. Andrew Carnegie dominates the steel industry with his corporation. However, he still sold out to J.P. Morgan to form the U.S. Steel Corporation. There were the beginnings of modern business administration, including a hierarchy of control, middle manager between workers and owners. Horizontal integration. These are methods how people built monopolies. Horizontal integration was combining firms in the same enterprise to form corporations, like in the steel industry. If you just, we're mining, and then there would be another horizontal integration with refining and shipping, etc. Vertical integration means you take over all the mining, refining, and shipping. They take over businesses that a company relied on to function, John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil controlled 90% of refined oil at the time. There are also such things as pool arrangements, in which companies made agreements to stabilize rates and divide the markets. However, this did not work well. There was also a trust agreement in which stockholders transfer stock to trustees for shares in the trust. In this way, the trustees exercise control over the companies. However, New Jersey makes the trust unnecessary and permits corporate mergers. So now there's a concentration of economic power in the few. Which brings about economic growth, but also controversy. Capitalism and its critics. So capitalism is basically individualism. Every person has a chance to succeed or get rich. And there came about this idea of the self-made man, that not all rich people started poor. Self-made man, meaning started poor. No, I worked my way up here. But not all of the rich men started poor. They already had some level of prosperity. The rise to power is not just hard work. Corruption is rampant, as well as bribery and blackmail. Additionally, social Darwinism crept into society. The idea that only the fittest individuals survive and flourish. And the growth of large business is because of the survival of the fittest. Herbert Spencer, in particular, said that society benefited from the elimination of the unfit and the survival of the strong and talented. William Graham Sumner said that individuals must have the freedom to struggle and compete to succeed or fail. Social Darwinism appeals to businessmen, and it legitimized their success and justified their tactics. The gospel of wealth also came about, in which that the wealthy should use their riches to advance social progress and help out their communities. In Russell Conwell's Acres of Diamonds, everyone had the opportunity to get rich. Horatio Alger's novels, anyone could advance to great wealth through hard work, or at least any man at this time period. Lester Frank Ward said that civilization was governed by human intelligence, which could freely shape society. Then there was the formation of the American Socialist Party, which took drastic approaches to reform. Henry George wrote Progress and Poverty, in which he stated that progress is not real if it widens the rich and poor gap. This book proposed a single tax to redistribute wealth and eliminate poverty. Edward Bellamy's Looking Backward was a vision of a new social order in which there's a communal society and redistribution in which want, politics, and vice are unknown. With the growth of the monopoly, this leads to artificially high prices and an unstable economy. What opportunities are left for others? The wealthy lifestyle appears as an affront to those struggling. While the standard of living is generally rising, the rich and poor gap is increasing. Industrial workers in the new economy. Immigration. Huge deal. Europeans come to the eastern United States, while Asians and Mexicans come through the western United States. They wanted to escape poverty and oppression, and they searched for opportunities, although this was sometimes misleading. They clustered in occupations by ethnic group. And the labor contract law allows a company or someone here in the U.S. to pay for the passage of immigrants and deduct that payment from their wage. They suffered low-income, poor job security, and many had to adjust from the farm to industrial labor. There was a loss of control over work conditions and production. There's a different management system. Women enter the workforce to support themselves or their family, or when their husband's wage is inadequate. Reformers considered women to be vulnerable. They shouldn't work independently. However, when they did work, they had arduous jobs in the textile industry, domestic service, etc. And they also had lower wages than men. There were also children working because the families needed money. There were child labor laws, but they were ineffective. They had to work exhausting long hours, and they were susceptible to injury. The American accident rate is higher than any other industrial nation at this time. So there's the beginnings of labor unions to fight against bad working conditions. However, they have little success. The National Labor Union excluded women because of the ideal of domesticity. The public blames the workers for labor disputes. Molly Maguire's was a militant labor organization which used terrorist attacks. So this led to the idea that labor activism was motivated by radicals and no one else. There's also a railroad strike. The Eastern Rail announces a 10% wage cut, so this led to a class war. Strikers riot, and state militias try to suppress. However, the strike fails. This is America's first national labor conflict. America's first national labor organization was known as the Knights of Labor, in which it was made up of all workers, most business people, as well as women. They wanted a long-range reform of the economy and a transfer from the wage system to a cooperative system. Their series of strikes discredit the organization, and it dissolved within a few years. However, the American Federation of Labor, which is an association of craft unions and skilled workers, they are hostile to women entering the workforce, but if women go into the workforce, then that drives wages down for everybody. They sought equal pay for women, but that's less attractive to employers, and so they're driven out of the workforce. They use collective bargaining to try to get better hours, working conditions, wages, and a call for a national 8-hour workday. So they strike in Haymarket Square, and this leads to a bomb that kills and injures many. Anarchism becomes a code word for terrorism and violence, even though they were peaceful visionaries in general. The Carnegie system cuts wages at the Homestead plant, and so the Amalgamated Association at first agrees, but then Henry Clay Frick, he's under the direction of Carnegie, denies union rights to negotiate, and so the union strikes. He sends Pinkerton agents, aka strike breakers, however, the strikers start an oil fire in the water and the Pinkerton surrender. So the governor sends the National Guard, and finally the Amalgamated surrendered. The Pullman Palace Car Company cuts wages, but rents stay the same. Railway Union, led by Eugene Debs, they strike, so transportation is paralyzed from Chicago to the Pacific Coast. Rail operators ask the federal government for help, and the president sends troops. The federal court issues an injunction forbidding continuation of the strike, so the strike collapses. Workers could not keep up with the cost of living, and they had less political power and control of the workplace. And labor organizations are only a small percentage of the industrial workforce. And because of the shifting nature of the workforce, because immigrants wanted to only remain in America for a short time. Others are in constant motion. They're not in one place long enough to exert any power. There's some social mobility, and small gains are made, and there's hope for others. but the corporations are too powerful against workers. So industrialization basically equals progress and pain. And next time, Age of the City. Hope this helped.